Hi, this is Steve Hagler. I'm the Executive Director of LearnUp Centers, and you're here on a webinar on how to teach blends without teaching blends. Thank you for being here today on Thursday, even though this webinar was originally scheduled for yesterday. We had some technical issues with some of the upgrades from Zoom, so we won't take full credit for that delay, but hopefully it was not inconvenient to get here today, and we will be recording this and send it out to anybody who registered. Again, my name is Steve Hagler. I'm Executive Director of LearnUp Centers. LearnUp Centers is a nonprofit based in San Francisco on a mission to teach reading to all types and all ages of learners. And I'm here with Steve Tatum. He's our reading director and founder of the Tatum Reading Program. We are working on how to teach blends without teaching blends. And this webinar is going to focus on some of the things that you can do to help your students learn how to do the blends as quickly as possible. I want you to thank, first of all, for being patient. We're all new with this technology, so sometimes it goes our way, sometimes it doesn't. As people who've seen me before, my favorite saying is live by technology, die by technology. So hopefully we'll get through today without too many glitches, but I appreciate your patience. We have a broad range of participants. So some have been teaching reading for a very long time and others are new to teaching reading. So we will cover the gamut from those who are novices to those who are a little bit more advanced. I will turn off the chat once Steve gets talking. We'll let everyone focus on what he has to say, and then we'll open up chat at the end. We will also have questions available during the session. If they're relevant, I will ask them to Steve directly. We may even ask you to come off and talk about it a little bit if it's a question that's relevant. At the end, we'll have time for Q&A and get into topics in depth that you're interested in. There's 4 ways to support LearnUp if you're interested after this session. You can recommend families to LearnUp at www.learnupcenters.org. We do free reading assessments for those that are interested. You can become a tutor for us. I'm in the mode of training and hiring tutors. You can spread the word about our methodologies to your districts and other teachers. Or you can support a struggling reader by donating to learnupcenters.org. You can do that through our website. And we do all these webinars for free, but we do try to raise funds so we can help those who otherwise can afford to taking our lessons. And we're in San Francisco. And Steve, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great. Okay. All right. So I need to start with a little overview in case some of you are new to this. Those who have been through the course have heard this a lot, but we are radically different than most systematic phonics programs in as much as we don't start everyone from the beginning. We don't do a sound a day. I've never done that. And that we start where the child's at. And I have a test that does that called the Tatum Reading Test that helps you get a start. Generally, a start one is a child who doesn't know sounds or consonants and can't read. So that child, we usually minimally do 4 consonants a vowel first day and get them into a book called the CAB. And then we put them through our kindergarten series, but that's a non-reader. Start 2 is a child who can do 1-syllable words. They're often first, second, third graders who just haven't progressed in reading. And we start with them by cleaning up all the consonants and vowels the first day, and sometimes the teams. I found that these kids often put us at the sounds, but you can clear up all their sounds. You don't have to do them 1 a day, which to me is a nightmare. You clean them all up first day, and then you practice them on a regular basis, the way we're going to talk about. The emergent reader is somebody who's ready for 2-syllable words, and that child we will clean up the consonant teams and vowels and teach them how to break 2-syllable words down and put them into a reader that does that, often around 2nd grade level. And then start 4 is a child who's often been through other phonics programs, such as through a good Orton program or the old LIPS program, or Read America. These kids often know their consonant teams, vowels, our family, diphthongs, and some vowel teams. We give them credit for all of that, clean it up, and put them in a book. And then start 5 is a kid who has more comprehension problems but can read well. So this start thing is a crucial part of our program. Now, one of the reasons we can move quickly in our program is because of the work initially of Liberman and then of Patricia and Charles Lindemuth. And Liberman is the one who discovered that first graders, 70% of first graders, when they heard the word hit, can go hit, or map, at, or send, at, 30% can't. Those 30% who can't are ones who can't read. Okay, so she's the one who, one of the ones who identified that these phonemic skills, these segmenting, blending, manipulating, were crucial for first grade success. She then developed a phonological program, what she felt was sequential, that led to this, which I don't necessarily concur with. I tend to agree more with Diane McGinnis, who says that as early as possible, we want to isolate the sound or phoneme, and that though rhyming and other skills correlate with later reading, they're not cause effect. So I tend to go right more to phonemic awareness, which is from the research of Diane McGinnis. Regardless, from these, it became clear to me that we needed to systematically include segmenting, blending, and manipulating sounds as part of the lesson. And that's where all the power of reading comes from, because kids with dyslexia do not have a visual problem. Valentino just found that out in 1970. It's a language problem, a linguistic problem. It's a problem when Broca's area at the temple, when they try to sound out words with Broca, and then it goes to Wernicke's area up here and they sound it out and they make a connection, and over a period of time it stimulates the word form area behind the ear. And we found that kids with dyslexia don't hear the sounds and words. They're kind of blur. They have trouble isolating sounds. And without direct instruction, they just simply don't learn to read. They're that 30% Liberman discovered. So my approach then has been to include this segmenting and blending in all my lessons. So once I clean up the sounds, every day I review the sounds. So here's my board. And every day I review the sounds, like I'll go, buh, and the child will go, buh, and the child will go, k. I found that most of the first, second graders who have trouble with sounds have trouble with R, L, X, and Y, eh. Some ah. Those are their main problems. And putting us on sounds. So those I start cleaning up pretty quickly and through my daily review. So I'll say the sounds, they'll echo and point. I'll go rrr. Now notice rrr is not which a lot of people want to do. Is ER, IR, and UR. Rrr, your mouth puckers, and it's like red, rrr. Big difference, rrr. Okay, so I start cleaning up the sounds, and then I point to the sounds and the child reads them, okay? And I do that every day, cleaning up the sounds. Okay, now I then go to syllable work. And in syllable work, you have an example of blends where on our concept here, this is concept 4, where blends are introduced, I have syllables for tracking that follow a sequence. So I will have a child pull out rasp and then make it into risp and then into yisp and then into yipped. Now, I don't have to teach the blends visually. There's 50 some blends. I don't have to have them memorize those, because if they've been segmenting, they already are used to isolating various sounds. And the only difference between a blend and a CVC is if there's another sound. But if you've been working segmenting, they're ready to go. Okay, let me give you an example. I'm going to use what's called the Wizimo board, which you can get for free. To give an example. Okay, so initially, the child has been doing what I call tracking. Actually, that is a word coined by Patricia Lindemuth, tracking. But I track, Patricia Lindemuth had kids isolate sounds through mouth positions. I'm focusing more on getting them to have these sounds automatic. So I will have the child initially, when we're at just CVC syllables, pull out a syllable like FIP, and the child will go FIP, FIP. Now notice that they're isolating each sound. Now I'll say make it yip, and they'll go yip, and then they'll isolate y, and then they keep going ip, and make the change. Now make it yix, and they will go yix, y, ix, and make the change. Now this is hitting the 3 skills that Liberman found that kids had trouble with and have been proven to be the problems that kids with dyslexia have, which is segmenting sounds. That's when you're going yeah, blending sounds and manipulating sounds and words. That's what's preventing the word form area from firing. These 2 are not working well and therefore not stimulating the word form area. So we get them to where they're pretty automatically make it wix, wix, whoop, ix. Notice I don't make the change until I do the entire word, wix. So try it with me at home as I do this. Wex. So you should say wex, whoop, x, wex. Okay? Tex. Tex. X. Tex. Tem. 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 Then, once we do it auditorily, we then move to visual, where I will make a word and the child will sound it out. Tim, notice there, they are segmenting it and then blending it. We're hitting these phonological skills. Also, notice all the review you're getting over the sounds. That's why we don't have to do flashcards, because of all the review. We get the review in isolation and we get the review in tracking. Now make it rim. The child would go rim, pardon me, we're reading. I would make it, the child would go rim. The child would go rit. Ret. Okay. Now, so we've been doing this with our Start 2 child. Start 2 child is kids that know their consonants and vowels, and we do this 1 syllable word, and then we move to blends. And they've been isolating sounds. So when I go back the next day to auditory presentation of the syllables, it's really just a matter of this. Ret, Steve, make it rest. And they have to go rest. Now, depending on the child's intuitive nature, I may have to do this when I say, ret, Steve, make it rest. I may have to do that initially. But I have some kids intuitively just do that. Rest. Okay. Okay, make it rest. The child goes rest. 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 Make it remp. 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 Okay. Make it rem. Make it realm. Make it relp. So notice that I'm simply taking a procedure we've done of segmenting blending, and I'm extending it now for blends, and I'm not approaching them as an entity by themselves. They are just another sound for them to segment and blend. And it happens very naturally. It's not like kids going, oh my God, there's a blend. It's just a very natural thing. And then before long, we start front blends, okay? Make it trelp. Trr, trr, up, trelp. By the way, trr is a sticky one. For front blends, TR and DR are sticky ones because when you put TR together and you say it quickly, it goes from this, trr, 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 it becomes chur. Okay, that's not a problem for reading, trelp, but it's a problem for spelling. If I give the child the word trap, I have kids put CHR. So what I have to do is give them a spelling pronunciation of trap looks like trap. Trip looks like trip. Truck looks like truck. Okay. Same with DR. DR is a tricky blend because if you say durer fast, durer, 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 it becomes jur. And kids will spell like drag, JR. So it's not a problem for reading, drought, but for spelling, if I give the word drag, I have to say drag, it looks like durag. So DR and TR are the problems for front blends. But besides that, it's a matter of just getting kids to isolate the sounds, okay? So let's make it frelp, and the child will go frelp, 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 frimp, By the way, this is advanced. I just want to show you that you're basically isolating sounds. And again, when you put one here, you may have to move this out for them to see the space. So with this approach, number one, you are really reinforcing the isolation of sounds. That's why we get so much practice of sounds. Now, if a child's having a particular problem with a blend, rather than teaching them that blend, I just include it more in diagnostic tracking. So let's say a child is having trouble with the R blends. So I might have frip, make it frep, or F. Make it terep, terep, terep. Make it prep, prep, rep. Make it direct, direct, direct. Make it directs, directs, it. Oops, directs, I'm sorry. All right. Now, those who've taken my course before, this diagnostic tracking, you can leave my tracking sequence and do this anytime you have a problem sound. Let's say they're having an et problem and you're following my tracking sequence, you can leave it and go drix, make it drex, make it drax, make it prax, make it pricks, and keep going the et problem till it gets resolved. It's called diagnostic tracking. Okay. So let's look at where this tracking's coming from in my plan. Okay. All right, can we all see the lesson plan? Rosemary, can you see this? Okay, good. So in my lesson plans that I have in my book, I will have a review of what sounds I'm covering for spelling. So notice here at concept 7, I'm reviewing for, they now know CK, and at the end of the word K and CK. For D, they know D and ED. For F, they know P, F, PH, F, double F. That's for spelling. For reading, they know these sounds for reading, and we always warm up with that. Then we do the blend lesson, and then here's our syllable work that we can do over the next several days. Now, some kids pick it up pretty quick, so we can just move on. Others, you might want to stay here for 5-6 days. Depends on the child. Now notice then that both the spelling, by the way, mouth means you're saying it, point means you're making it. So in this case, you may be saying this list of words, and after you're done, you may be building these and the child reads these. The next day, you may be saying this group and then building this group. You have plenty of words here to work for syllable work. Okay. Now then for spelling, your spelling then makes them use those blends. Now in my case, I've also taught what some of you know as the floss rule. I call it the hungry rule. Short vowels want a bigger piece. But I'm always reviewing previous stuff when I am reviewing, when I'm introducing like the blends. So let's look at what your spelling would look like. I'm going to stop the share. Okay, and go to the whiteboard. Okay. So are we seeing a whiteboard here? Good. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and click text. Click here. Now a child, if you're tutoring, a child may be writing this on a whiteboard. They may be typing it. Okay. Let me get this. Okay, so the first word is black. And again, they do the same thing they did in the tracking in their spelling. Remember in tracking, when I want flist, they want flist, flist, flist. For spelling, I'll say your word is black and they go black, oh, this is acting up. Now, if you're taught the hungry rule, they got to go, is this a hungry vowel or not? Short vowel, yeah, it wants a bigger piece, black. But notice we blend, we're just simply isolating or segmenting the blend. Spell, they got to go sp, but they've done that in the syllable work. Now they got to go, oh, it's a short vowel, it wants a bigger piece. Spell. Still, oh, it's a short vowel. It wants a bigger piece. Spot, spot, spot. Plant, 2 blends. Plant, okay. So notice that the work we did in nonsense words is practically applied now in our spelling on a daily basis. So again, they're learning how to isolate sounds. Okay. By the way, if you don't use my program, I will just show you how you can use the Wizimo board for whatever you do. Okay? Because I don't expect everyone to be using my program by far. Okay. Now, let's go to reading. Rosemary, do you see the book Camping? No, okay, thank you.
Steve, I don't, oh, now I see it. Yes, I printed it, but now it's up on the screen.
All right, so camping is a blend book. Now, one of the things I mentioned in my concepts was with start twos, you can often do ending and front blends are introduced at concept 7, but you can often do back and front together with kids with this segmenting. We've just found the segmenting kind of solid. It's not a memory of blends, it's an application. So now when we go to the book, we always follow this procedure with a child. We model sounding out and the child blends it and says the word, then they sound it out and blend it. So I'm going to play 2 roles. So I'll be me, snacks, and I'll look at the child and the child will go snacks. Then the child will go trip. And then I will go ast. And the child will go last. And then the child will go tent. Now, if they can't put it together, let's try the next one. Let's say the child did this. B-r-ush, b-gush, b-r-ush, rush. I would go brush. I'd say it very quick, brush, so that they can start hearing the blend themselves, put it together. I'll speed it up, the blending. So, my turn. Pond, the child would say. I would do this word because it's a sticky wicket. So I'd go across, across. Then the child, rock, rock. My turn. Jumped. Child would go jump. So we'd alternate reading these words. Those who took my workshop know if they had problems with any of these words, I then do the 4-step method, which is after we've read them, I would say the problem word like jumped and they read it, jumped. Across, they read across. Trip, they'd read trip. Grass, they'd read grass. Then I'd give a definition for the problem word. This means to like leap, oh, jump. This means you are moving through, or it's hard to say this one, moving through to another side of maybe a stream, across. This is something that cows eat, grass. Often you go on a vacation, you take a trip. And then the next step is we point and they read the words. So they get 4 looks at the words, okay? This was influenced by Slingerland's approach up in Oregon with the sisters who created Slingerland back in the 70s. This is what they did with basils. Then we read the phrases together twice, and then I'll say a phrase and they have to read it. In a hotel, they go, in a hotel. After us, was coming. Okay. Then we move to the story. Now, this is where we're using pressure release. Pressure release is a magical technique that is the difference between phonetics carrying over to reading or phonetics not carrying over to reading. See, what happens is phonics doesn't magically transfer to reading, which some people seem to think happens. It doesn't. Reading requires much more involvement than just sounding out words. You need to see words that grow together. You need to understand punctuation, the emotional aspects, etc. When a child is struggling to read initially, as they're reading, I love to, what's happening is they're burning sugar. As they're burning sugar, their arteries and veins are narrowing. They're getting less oxygen and they yawn a lot. If you've ever worked with a kid who has this problem, you'll notice they yawn a lot. Okay. And then they get fed up with the book and they're done. Well, with pressure release, that doesn't happen, because with pressure release, the child will read, I love to camp. Now, he struggled twice. After 2 struggles, we take over. Now, if they struggle twice in a sentence, we'll reread the sentence with them. So I'll say, with me, I love to camp. Then I take over for 2 sentences and I leave out 2 words. So The child, I'll be reading when we, and I leave this word out and they go camp because they saw it or they sound it out. When we camp, mom and dad pick the, and I might leave this out, spot in the hills. Then we keep reading together. The last, I might leave this out, trip we had was lots of fun. Then I give it back. And the child might go, sis and I set, that's one struggle, up the tap. Then, now they made a struggle and didn't notice it. So I point above it with my pen, if I have a book, and that means sound it out in what makes sense. Tent. All right, we'll reread that sentence. Let's reread it. Sis and I set up the tent. Then I'll take over. Then we hit the, they'll fill in that word, top of the tent to test it. It didn't fall, so we sat and rested. Then I give it back to the child. So what we're doing is we're working with the blends in text in a way that it makes sense. And using pressure release, there's not a student that I've come across that I haven't been able to get to start to read the first day. With some kids, it's 4 consonants and 1 vowel, the cab, but we're often reading, okay? So we're applying this blends in a text. So let's look at the plan. First, we work the sounds in isolation where I clean them up. I say the sound, they point, I point to it. We then do syllable, nonsense syllable work where they have to track each sound and change it for both spelling and reading. Then I give them spelling words where they have to use the blends in spelling, and then they do it in reading. It's this combination of these 6 components that pull together it. And you don't need to do memorization work because you are doing processing work, which replaces the memory required for memorization work. Okay, that's a mouthful, okay? Here's another blend book, The Trip. And we're starting to get bigger words after spinning, trip, sand, cost, plan, pass, plank, etc. We have our phrases. And then we're into the trip, okay? Again, it's called the pressure release 222. When the child struggles twice, if it's in a sentence, we'll reread it. Then I'll take over for 2 sentences and leave out 2 words. Now, if he sounds out trips, here's what I'll do. It's to go on ips. That's 2 struggles. So we'll reread it. And I know he had trouble with trips, so that's the word I'm going to leave out. So we read, my mom and dad love to go on. Now, often they'll still go ips. The reason they'll do that is the word form area, which fires in most first graders by the 3rd trimester of first grade, is not firing in these kids because they have not had enough work between Broca and Wernicke's to develop a process to stimulate that area. So they're still sounding out trips. And lo and behold, when it comes up again, let's see if it comes up. Well, if it came up again, they'd sound it out again, okay? And teachers will often be puzzled by that. It's not puzzling. Their word form area is not firing. They don't remember words, okay? That's why a sight word method with kids with this problem is a total waste of time. You must stimulate the word form area. Now, yes, you can learn some sight words. I have the most basic ones in my manual we work on. We get 4 or 5 at a time, like the and is. But in terms of a sight word program for these kids, not going to happen until the word form area fires. And you'll know it, by the way, in tutoring, when it fires, you'll know it. Because the child, when he sound out a word like here, let's see, dad and mom packed the van. And then when they see it again, they'll go, and mom packed the van. They'll remember the word and read it. Get up and cheer. Their word form area is firing. And that's an exciting time because everything's going to go quicker once the word form area fires. Okay. Okay. All right, let's pause for a moment. Here's pressure release. Sit to the right of your child. Your voice will go to the left side of the brain, which is the reading hemisphere. Have your child begin reading as he swings the tip of the pencil or business under the text. And so it kind of walks through these procedures I just went through. This is a powerful technique. Now, there's one difference on the internet versus when I'm next to a child. When I'm next to the child and they make their struggles, I take over and they read with me and I pick up their pace. Slightly pick up their pace. If I'm on the internet, there's a second or two lag. So that doesn't work. So I use echo reading on the internet, where they'll read a sentence and after their second struggle, I will then read a sentence and then have them echo and read it just like I did. And then I'll read another and have them echo, and I'm working more on fluency and punctuation, then I give it back to them, okay? And that's a modification I've learned on the internet in working with students. We also have our repeated reading mentioned here, and beat the clock. To stimulate the word form area, you need to do a complete plan like we do, where you are basically segmenting, blending, manipulating sounds. You're applying it in spelling, you're applying it in reading, and you stimulate the word form area with repeated readings regularly. Now, every day we do beat the clock in our sessions. I just tutored child today and we ended with beat the clock. He started with 55 seconds for passage and ended at 24, okay? And what it is we take a paragraph and time them. It's a paragraph we're reading in the book, the last paragraph we've read maybe, time them, and then he gets 4 times to beat that time. So he might start at 50 seconds and get to 40 and then the 30, then 28, 25, 24. And what we're teaching them to do is get more fluent and natural. I also teach them how to read punctuation, how to pause at commas, how to have a longer pause for dashes, what dashes mean. It means there's kind of an additional thought you could actually pull out and the sentence would still make sense. But I have to, they don't respect periods and commas, which totally changes the meaning, by the way, if you don't respect the punctuation. So I have to teach that, the punctuation. And I will do that a lot in echo reading. So I'll go, and Tom went to the water, and there's a dash, I'll pause, something he dreaded doing, and then jumped in and went swimming. So I'll show them the pauses at the dash, okay? That's part of what I'm doing in echo reading. So we do beat the clock every day, and then we have the parents do a 1-minute timed reading at night where they read 1 minute cold, graph it, and then they get 4 times to beat that words per minute. So they might start at 50 words a minute, and 4 times later, they're at 65. The combination of those two every day help fluency, but more importantly, they're stimulating the word form area. Okay. All right, now for those who don't have my board, I want to introduce you to the Wismo board. You can get this free. It's a wonderful board. All right. Okay, so this is something, you go to wismo.com, I believe it is, and you can make this board yourself any way you want. It didn't come looking like this. I made it to fit my program, and this is for a beginning reader, but if I have an advanced reader, all I got to do is this, and now I have a more complete code, okay? And then I can do this and work on my endings and prefixes, okay? So, but with a beginning reader, I will do this so they have a partial code. and they actually are pulling their sounds down here. So if you're doing a traditional phonics program that's working more flashcards, you want to really move more to this segmenting, blending, manipulating sounds, because that's where all the action is. And you can make your own list of words, that hits, blends, or teams, or whatever. The key thing is that they segment properly. Again, chit, ch, I, t. Make it fit, I. Notice they're isolating each sound, fit, okay? Now with my older kids, I do advanced phonemic awareness that Fitzgerald talks about, but I've been doing it, I learned it from Lindemood back in the 80s, from LIPS program, how to do advanced phonemic. They were way ahead of the game, the LIPS program. And there I just say the syllable and they change. Fit, make it chit. I gotta be careful here with these. Chit, make it chitaw. Oh, this is advanced. Let me clean this up. Let me show you advanced phonemic awareness. Here's advanced phonemic. Chitaw. Chit. Taw. Good. Make it choi two. Oi, two. Make it thoi te. And these are following best bets for spelling. Okay. So that's advanced phonemic awareness that we do with kids further in the program or older kids. And studies are pretty clear for older students. The missing piece for older students is a quick systematic phonics program with authentic books and advanced phonemic awareness. This is what the Reading League has determined. Okay, so you can get this, the Wizimo board, and work whatever sound you're working with and do this syllable tracking yourselves, okay? Also, they do have practice exercises. This is free, but you can pay for some exercises if you want to review components. I tend to not do too much worksheet or drill work. I like to work with the board primarily. So let's now open it for questions. We go from there.
Steve, I have a question.
Shoot.
Dyslexia, I mean, does it applies to all Latin and Germanic languages?
Dyslexia, yeah. Go ahead.
What about the Oriental language where there's like roots and radicals, they're more pictographic? Does that also apply?
It's a different type. They will have, if they're using more right hemisphere, so they'll have reading problems because of interference with their right hemisphere processing. And so they'll end up having a form of dyslexia, but it'll be caused for a different reason. It will be difficulties with areas of processing in the more right hemisphere components. Whereas dyslexia, as we know it in the Western countries, have to do more with the auditory components. But you don't just read, I mean, we're an auditory-based language, but there are syllabic-based languages, there are pictograph kind of languages. So reading problems there would be based on different areas of brain involvement.
Did you ever find out like the differences between the left brain and right brain hemisphere for each of the gyrus, the Wernicke, the Broca's? Did you ever find that out?
Yeah, I need to be more specific. In general, the right hemisphere deals with more holistic components of the language. So the right has to do with more of the holistic and meaningful. Like music, I think you're dealing more with rhythm, and the left is more with particular beats. But you know what? I'm going to remind myself to make a note to look into that this weekend. I have nothing better else to do.
Thank you.
Hold on. Uh,
Hey, Steve, to be clear, dyslexia is an evolutionary issue with the brain, correct?
yeah, dyslexia is genetic. It's passed from generation to generation. It's believed to be an issue that possibly occurs in the third trimester of birth. And it has to do, we believe, this is from Galliberto's work, that it may be due to a cell migration that occurs in the third trimester, and that certain neurological processes are not moving to the correct part. There's myopias or mytopias, dystopias. There's certain cell migration that should be in the left hemisphere is not occurring. However, as a result, there's more right hemisphere development. And this is why kids with dyslexia are really gifted when it comes to the right hemisphere abilities. So this was work that Galliberto was doing, and another neurologist whose names escape me, a brilliant guy in the 60s who died prematurely. But that put aside, we know that it's passed through genetics, that it is a brain difference, and that the brain difference often in real life works to the advantage of the child who has dyslexia. 40% of entrepreneurs who are dyslexic have dyslexia. Pardon me, they're not dyslexic, they have dyslexia. That many of our gifted entrepreneurs have this right hemisphere gift. But it does cause big problems for them in reading if they're not taught properly. It's anywhere from 1.5% of the population to 20%, depending how you read, how you look at it, what research. I've found that the 20% are usually my start 3s and 4s. The 1.5% are my start 1s, you know, kind of. Good question. Other questions?
A quick question on the pressure release.
Yes.
When
Yes.
you start like in the beginning of the book and then you're using the graph for their start and then their trials to see what they can beat, you're using the same passage for them to repeat through the whole graph to achieve that higher one for validity, right?
Right, what I'm doing, let's say I'm at chapter 1 and I'm a teacher. I'm gonna just take the last passage I've dealt with and we'll do beat the clock. Then the parents will take a passage from that chapter, do a cold reading and 4 repeated readings of that same passage. Next day, they'll take it from a different place. We're not doing the same passage forever. And they will take it from a different and do a timed reading. What we found through this approach, our kids are able to move up through the books and their fluency is able to move because my books change grade level. For instance, my junior high series, which I wrote for feisty boys and girls, called The Moonlight Tales, starts at like 1.9 and goes to mid 7th grade. So I'll have kids starting that book at 30 words a minute in The Fog at 1.9, and 3 months later are reading Ocean Woman at 7.5 at 90 words a minute. Well, that's incredible, not only in what they're decoding and reading, but in their fluency. And we get that kind of growth because the parents are helping us and we're moving in terms of the fluency while we're moving up in the books. Now, if we lock it, let's say we're at the 4th book, Time Tunnel, and they were meeting 50 words a minute and they go there and they're like 40 and they're stuck at 40 or 35. We may go to another book at that same level in another series in our family to get the fluency back up so it's progressing and then move ahead. But generally, for the most part, we're able to move from book to book if we get the support from the parents.
I have a question.
Sure.
This is my first time with you, and I understand that you did one on reading
Yes.
earlier. Is there some way I can see what that was? Is there a video of it or anything?
We're going to be offering this again at some point. and we'll be advertising it. It'll probably be in July. It's a 3-week course. Okay.
Okay. The other thing is, do you sell your books that you're talking about?
We do. We have the hard copies we sell. We're also going to have digital versions of it, which we will be selling as well. We're right now fine-tuning that, but the hard copies you can buy through my website, tatumreading.com.
What is it?
tatumreading.com.
Tatum?
Tattum.
Oh, Tatum. Okay, Tatum.
Reading.com. It's a pretty simple website, and you can order.
And the ones that you said for junior high, they start around the end of first grade?
Well, all my series, I've written, 9. All of them start at first grade.
Okay.
Consonants and short vowels. They all start at start 2, consonants and short vowels.
Okay.
And then they move to VCCV or VALTAG, 2 syllable words, and then they move to our family. They all follow a sequence, and they all raise grade level. So for junior high, I use Moonlight and Sunlight. Sunlight is more with girls in mind.
Okay.
You make a nice package because the last 2 books of Moonlight are girls' favorite of mine as well. So they go from Sunlight to the last 2 books of Moonlight. And that I use a lot with the middle school kids, those 2 series.
Okay, and what do you use for adults?
I have a historical fiction series called Chronicles of Yore. I also have
Prodigals of York?
Right.
Okay.
And that starts at first grade and goes through 10th grade. And I also use Making Music, which is the life of a student who had reading issues. And it starts, every chapter changes phonetic structure. So rather than a book for each chapter 1 is closed syllables, chapter 2 is 2 syllables, chapter 3 is Our Family, and it starts at first grade and goes all the way to adult. It's about a 90-page book.
So currently these are for sale on your website.
Right.
At what point do you think you'll have them online?
Julie, Steve Hagler will be better able to answer that. Hopefully in the next 2 weeks.
Oh, okay.
Hi, this is Alyssa, and I have a question kind of based on this, what you were talking about of what happened, how dyslexia develops in the brain, and you mentioned
Right.
About that it might happen in the 3rd trimester. I've also been understanding that, I was talking, I won't say who the person is, but I was talking to somebody who's a neurologist at UCSF, and he was saying that what they see, connected to dyslexia is that once somebody hits 25, which is also the age in which, executive function sort of crystallizes more, they see that it actually shifts. Obviously, it's, you want to be reading before that. But I'm wondering what you know about that, if that's really true, if like someone is not remediated, because I've heard from a lot of people, like they struggled when, especially when we weren't remediating people. Once they got older, it kind of, things crystallized and they're now able to read and write with more ease, even if they were not, obviously didn't have the kind of training that you're doing or others are doing today. So I'm just curious about.
I don't know about age 25, but I much prefer working with high school kids than elementary because, the myelin sheath is developed. They've been around the block. Some of them really want to read, and I can really move with a high school or junior high kid that's got his accent. I'm working with two 5th and 7th graders now, and we're rocking and rolling. We're now moving into my novel, the Baker and the Georgetown Ghost, which is an adult level book. And, I much prefer that because there's a lot that is maturing as they get older. And there's also a lot of them had so many processing issues while they were young with ADD that they couldn't sit long enough to learn, So yeah, I believe that as they get older.
But, as they get older, then it becomes less of an supposedly. But I don't know. I was just curious if you know.
I just would say that in my experience, for most situations, a child in high school, et cetera, is easier. They have more processing going on. Great question. Anything else?
I have a question, Steve.
Sure.
Lisa Lyon.
Hello.
Have you ever found that a person's normal rate of speaking is a barrier to increasing their fluency level?
Well, yeah. You know, if you have kids that hem and haw when they speak, yeah. And or have speech and language issues, yes. And the deal is ultimately we want to move to silent reading, but with kids with dyslexia, we may never get there. They need to hear the word to process it. So with a severe case of dyslexia, I'm happy if I get 100 words a minute. I'm delighted. But I try to shoot for grade level fluency, which is I take an average number and I have a rule of thumb. 70 in the spring of first grade and add 20 every year up through high school. So second grade is 90, third grade is 110, 130, 150, et cetera. But you can have kids with speech language problems that process better in their head than they can talk. And the only problem with that is oral reading is an observable behavior that you can watch and interact with, where silent reading, there's inferred behaviors. It's not as direct. But, you know, I worked with a really sharp kid who had that issue. And when he was off the silent reading, he was fine. And he didn't have to have his mouth get in his way. So, yeah, I'd say, yeah, it does. The one kid I have now is doing ums all the time. And part of that is we're trying to move to phrase reading and he gets tongue-tied. But yeah, I have found that. I still work on the fluency with them. But keep in mind that with some kids, the silent reading will help with that.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? If not, next week. Pardon me?
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, shoot.
Yeah, no, I was just wondering also, is the difference between, so when you're talking about the stage 4 or 5, is that considered like what's sometimes called deeper dyslexia or higher level dyslexia once they get to that point? Is that what it means? Because it's written in the little.
I know what it means to me, but if they're talking about people who have their sounds and are learning to apply it, like apply fluency, that's what I'm talking about. People haven't pulled it together, is what I'm talking about. Okay.
Okay.
So next week we will be talking about the 3 modes of reading, because systematic phonics is the doorway, but directed reading and whole language is reading. It's a controversial discussion I'll be having next week, because I train teachers for a school called Denver Academy, and I taught one group to do systematic phonics for the kids with dyslexia, another group to do directed reading for the kids who had that program, and a third group to do whole language. And I believe all programs should have those 3 in a developmental sequence: systematic, directed reading, whole language. So we'll discuss that next week. The following week, I'm going to be talking about tips for spelling for everybody. So all kinds of cool things for spelling, including orthographic mapping. So that's on the table for the next 2 weeks. Okay. So Steve, are you there?
I'm here, Steve. Thank you very much for that session. So I think we're going to end the session now, and we look forward to seeing you next week on Wednesday when we talk about the 3 types of reading that we teach and talk about in Learn Up Centers. And then the following, we'll talk about spelling. I look forward to sending you a recording of this call along with the handouts as soon as they're ready. So I'm going to already stop the recording here now.